All right. Hope everybody is doing well. Welcome to our webinar here on Easter engagement and the future of discipleship. Here we go. Here we are. But I'm really excited about kind of joining in with you all today. It's going to be a really good time. I think this is something that Subsplash has been thinking about for a long time, and I think it's just been a great time for us to kind of think and really dive into some of these things that we're going to go over on our call here on our webinar today. So a couple things. One, wanted to introduce myself to you. My name is Manny Matos. I get to serve as one of our client success managers here at Subsplash, which we have a whole team. I'm one of many, and our whole job is to make sure that those that are trying to solve this engagement problem, we have industry experts, people with boots on the ground, learning about kind of where the church is going, where church is at. And we just have a great team. If you are a current client, call your CSM right after this. They'd be able to really help you out to kind of take kind of what you guys are doing and really cater it towards what you as a church are trying to accomplish. I've actually been at Subsplash for about 3 years. When I first joined, I was doing more like mid-level to smaller churches. Now I get the privilege to also serve some of our larger ministries and organizations. And really, the reason why I say that is it's been cool to kind of see that it doesn't matter what part of the spectrum you are as a church, everybody's trying to solve very similar problems, right? Like it doesn't matter, like everybody's kind of in the same boat. We all have the same message, right? We all have the same gospel we're trying to preach, but the problems are very similar no matter kind of where you're at. And I mean, it varies a little bit, but not by much. And so, hey, a couple things before we jump in to what we're going to talk about. A couple things. We still have our raffle open. So go ahead right now before we jump into this. Get on Instagram, get on Facebook, and go ahead and opt into this. I want to make sure that if you are, oh, we got somebody from Italy. Come on. That's so cool. But hey, if you are wanting to opt into this, go ahead right now. Facebook and Instagram so that you guys can get into this raffle. A couple things too, just some housekeeping stuff as we kind of get going. We're going to do a Q&A section towards the end. There's a lot that we're going to cover. Some of this is going to challenge you. Some of this is going to make you think differently about how you're approaching digital. Some of these things you'll have questions around Subsplash. Go ahead and drop that Q&A. Drop it right into the Zoom here, and I'm going to do my best to get to as many as I can towards the end. But now, just keep that in mind as I'm kind of going over some of these things. Go ahead and feel free to kind of drop some of that into the Q&A section. Also, here is today's agenda. So, want to make sure from a high level you know what you're walking away with this webinar. What are the things that you want to make sure that you know we're going to go over, and you're going to be able to kind of move, get going and implementing some of this. One, lots of data out there, a lot of latest trends from the industry, both within the church. We've partnered with a couple of different people to kind of get some data on that. And then even outside of the church, how are people engaging with their devices, right? We need to know, like, what are people looking for during this time, this weird time we find ourselves in? What kind of content are they searching for? When are they using their phones? Like, what are they leaving? What platforms are they leaving? We're going to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing in the church and outside of it. Then how do we then shift toward and adapt that discipleship strategy, right? So a lot of you might have a method on how you're approaching this. I hope today we can challenge you to think maybe how to fine tune that, how to adapt it. The third thing at the end, some of you either might be a client or maybe you're on the outside looking in. Well, what does an engagement platform look like? I hear this engagement buzzword. Manny, what are you talking about? We're going to demo that and how Subsplash is kind of bridging the gap beyond your Sunday, right? Bridging the gap between Monday to Friday. We're going to show you how we build a centralized platform to help you do that. And then the last thing is 4 boots on the ground, get you going strategies that you can implement before Easter. These are things that you can walk away with and be like, I might not be able to do 3 and 4 right now, but I can definitely do 1 and 2. We're going to make sure we hit that and that you guys are able to walk away with tools that you need to have the best Easter, but then also kind of shift the direction that your church is going on from a discipleship standpoint. And so, awesome. So before we dive in, I do want to take a time to really take a moment to pause. And honestly, this morning, just to kind of be open and transparent, I went for a walk and I was like, God, what is it you want me to be able to talk to these leaders, these pastors, these people that have a heart for their community? What are you doing? What are you wanting us to do? And honestly, I just felt really led to kind of pray before this webinar to invite God into this conversation, and then we'll dive right into what we're going to go. So why don't we pray? Maybe you're in a conference room with a couple different people. Maybe you're on the road. Don't close your eyes. But I do want to take this moment to kind of invite God, and really, this is what it's about. So why don't we go ahead and bow our heads and pray. God, we just thank you for this moment. God, we thank you for all of the different pastors and churches that are represented here right now, here. God, we know that your gospel message is what this world needs. God, we know that every church is represented here is wanting to reach their community, and in some cases beyond that. And Lord, I pray for your spirit to lead these conversations, for your spirit to enter in these conference rooms, for your ideas to kind of begin to allow people to see what it is you're actually doing around the world and what the gospel message means to our communities today. And so, Lord, I just pray for clarity. God, I pray for just humility as we talk about some of these things, to maybe think a little differently, to maybe erase the whiteboard and say, God, what are you saying? What are you speaking? And then be able to kind of act upon that, Lord. We invite you to this, and we love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, here we go. So before we kind of jump in to the next steps, I do want to pause here for a second. This statement that you see here is the Subsplash why. When we get up in the morning, when we write our code, when we make our calls with our clients, at the end of the day, our CEO from the top down is all about the discipleship journey, right? Now, that sounds very vague, but ultimately what it is what is that next step in that person's journey? Maybe that next step is to tune in online on a Roku TV. Maybe that next step is to attend an actual physical gathering. Or maybe that next step is, I've never done a daily devotional. Whatever that is, Subsplash is committed and focused on how we can help our churches and our clients and the people that on helping and equipping them with the right tools to be able to do this. And so that's just kind of like the groundwork of, hey, why are we even here? Why do we even exist as a company? At the end of the day, this is what we're trying to do. Now, I do want to be on the upfront here and just kind of talk a little bit about this buzzword engagement and kind of what Subsplash is building from an engagement platform. And so we want to make sure there's a couple things we want to focus in on, and then we're going to dive into some of the trends and analytics. A couple things. One, we want to make sure that we're designing things that delight your end users. So your end users being your congregation, right? When somebody wakes up in the morning and grabs a cup of coffee, right, and they're connecting with the Lord, and if they're using your app or your website, is that a delightful experience, or is this like the worst thing? So we want to make sure that we're doing that. We also are very committed in creating an environment that you can control, right? An environment that's branded to you, an environment that you can control their next algorithm step, not somebody else or some other organization. We want to make sure that we can help you do that and help you solve that problem. Gospel content. Hey, the message is still the same, right? Jesus is the message. How you deliver that gospel out there and having a platform that kind of goes across these different mediums is a big deal for us. And we want to make sure that you understand that's where we're coming from a technological standpoint. And then also kind of reaching people where they are. We know that they're on their devices. We know that they might not be physically with you today, but how do we reach them where they are now? And so this is what we mean by an engagement platform, is kind of bridging that gap and meeting people where they are today. So real quick, one, and maybe on the chat here you can see like, hey, Barna, sorry, I just saw, I think I saw that there were some audio issues here, but I'll keep going. Hopefully that's not terrible. But hey, this is a report from Barna on what are the 4 top concerns that are facing pastors today and that churches are facing today. And so now some of this is related to what we're going to talk about. Some of this is just good for you to know. Now, Barna is a study that they focus on churches, and they mainly on the Protestant side of the church, but they do a lot of studies on this. And so one is diluted gospel message is the number one priority, or one of the top priorities that churches are facing today. 2, the shift to secular age, right? And so That's a big one right there too. Like, are we, and I think 1 and 2 are kind of together, like, hey, is our message changing? What does this look like? How do we adapt? How do we stay the same? Again, big question that churches are asking. Number 3, reaching the next generation. That's a huge one. You look across your church, you look across the people that are connecting with you. Who is your church? Who are you reaching? And what does that next generation look like? I'm actually really excited about number 3. We're going to dive into a little bit. And then number 4, ineffective discipleship models. Now that's a big one. And that's one that I think we're going to be able to at least help begin the conversation and kind of tackle that on our time here today. So here's another one that I want to bring up alongside with Barna. So this is the 4+ rule. So what we've, based on studies, what we've seen is that the number of times, four times the number of times per week that Christians whose lives are radically different from non-believers engage with Scripture. So there's something about, and you might know this personally, there's just something about connecting with God throughout the week that's key, right? There's something about engaging with Scripture throughout the week that's key. And you're a pastor maybe here and you preach. I hear this all the time. Hey, Sunday is great, but make sure you're reading your word. Make sure you're reading your word, and you're trying to build that culture. Hopefully, with some of the things we talk about today, we can give you the tools to help you build that culture of Bible reading, build that culture of being a part of your people's experiences with God during the week beyond Sunday. It's one of the things we want to make sure that you understand and we can kind of go through. So here's one question that I want to throw out there. Now, I want to preface it a little bit before I say this. I want you to think and pause and really think about this question before you start to answer it in your head, right? So here's the question. Is engagement the new attendance? Now think about that for a second. Is engagement the new attendance? Here's what I know, and I've also been able to serve in churches and in the past. A lot of times we measure our data on how well we're doing based off our attendance. So, hey, I'm a church of 2,000. Hey, I'm a church of 100. And that's your reach, right? Or, hey, in Easter, we typically get 3x amount of people, and you're looking at the attendance. But what happens now when you open up and 30% of your people show up and the other 70% are not there? Maybe you're a church of 5,000, but only 300 are coming to your gatherings right now, right? That is a very real question to think about, right? Are we then now a church of, what does that mean? The point here is that there's a tension here now of, is engagement now the way that we can track who we are truly as a church, a body, an oikos? Is engagement now the new attendance? Now, I want to clarify something here too, because I was talking to a pastor the other day and I asked him this question. And he said, Manny, this question, I don't like it. It rubs me wrong, because I know that I need people to be in front of me physically. There's something about in-person gatherings, and there's something about being together across a coffee table. That's not what I'm saying here, and that's not what Subsplash is saying here. What I'm saying is engagement doesn't necessarily mean only digital engagement, but it means the ability to be able to help people stay connected to who you are as a church, right? Maybe engagement is submitting a prayer request to you, or maybe engagement is starting a reading plan or whatever. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to mean that they are at home in their living room watching your gathering. But this is a question for you to think about. Is engagement the new attendance? And I think that's a big question that either you are asking right now or you're scared to ask. Nonetheless, it's the reality of what we see here. Now, based off of Barna here as well, this shows us how people have been connecting with your church since what happened last year with COVID. And so about a third are still attending your church, right? And now when I mean attending, I mean like either physically attending and or digitally attending. About a third as a whole, this is based on Barna's group, about a third of people are actively attending our church. Now, you might be an outlier here and you have 100% of people back. That's okay. But the majority is a third. Another third has stopped attending church altogether. They're disengaged with the gospel. They're disengaged with church. And that's a different problem to solve. And then here, this is an interesting one. Switch churches or visiting multiple churches. This is what I call the YouTubers, right? Which sermon, which pastor do I want to listen to today, right? Now, is there a value for you to be able to hear different people? Absolutely. But there's also a value of being connected with your biblical community, right? And so I think what's happening as well here too is that people are now, they can be a church, like their church can now be in in California if they live in Texas. And again, I'm not trying to say those things are not bad, but there's probably also just realize that there's something happening within the church industry. And how do we approach this? How do we engage people? We believe we have the message, and we believe that our church in Lubbock, Texas, for example, is the solution for people here. How do we now approach this, engage this, and combat this? Now, I'm doing really hard on also making, I love the conversations going back and forth here. I'm going to be able to kind of get on this and see some of this. But I want to say something here. I know I might be stepping on some toes. Subsplash is not here trying to solve and tell you that you're doing church wrong. All right. We are just trying to say this is what some of the data is showing. And this is how we plan to help you in your church, in your oikos, in your home community, and the people that you have the ability to engage with. And so it's a tough thing. We're not going to solve it on this webinar, but we are going to lean in and we are going to ask the right questions and the difficult questions. Now here, I love this. This is awesome. So ComScore is a company based out of DC, actually, up in this area. And they do a report on how people use their devices like around the world. Now, what's interesting is that back in 2020, on the onset of what was going on in the pandemic, 19% more content consumed in religious or spirituality categories since the onset of the pandemic, right? Compared to negative 59 related to travel and plus 60% related to politics. Now, we know there was an election and a lot of different things going on, but 19% increase across all devices, Android, all these different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. ComScore went ahead and got this. There was an increase of 19% people looking for religious or spirituality category. What an opportunity. This is thousands, potentially millions of people that are looking and searching for hope. The hope that we have, the hope that your pastor's preaching every weekend, the hope that we know that we have the ability to infiltrate culture and make a difference. So the reality is people are hungry and they're looking for it on digital platforms, by the way, right? They're looking and they're hungry and they're needing direction. Come on, we can do it. We have a great opportunity to be able to help and shift your city and the different people that are in your community right now. And so now I want to take a second here and take a second to do a poll. And really what I want to know is, what kind of content are you producing today? This is just going to give me the context on like how we're engaging people throughout the week. But I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll, give it a couple seconds and see, hey, what kind of content are you producing? You might apply to a couple of these different ones. I'm sure a lot of you might have like some of the ones that I'm going to put here, but I do want to hear what are the different types of content that you guys are producing. So let me go ahead and drop this poll here. Let me go ahead and it should be showing up on your screen now. What kind of content? So there's a little bit audio, video, maybe text, or maybe a combination of those things. What type of content are you sending over to your people right now? Got a lots of stuff coming through. Wow, pretty much after weekly sermon, which I'm glad that we're all doing that. It's actually kind of a pretty big balance here of different approaches that churches are doing. So think about what are the different content streams that you are producing right now. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes. Looks like we still have a couple people that haven't voted. Yeah, so what are the different things that you as a church, from a communications department, getting out there and putting out there for people to be able to connect with, consume, right? Like they're engaging with. We're almost there, kind of where I would want us to be. A couple more minutes. Sweet. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this just for the sake of time. But there's a lot of good stuff coming through here already. And pull. So I'm going to go ahead and share the results here. So no surprise, weekly sermon. By the way, still an awesome place, and continue to do that, where people can hear the gospel through a sermon. Daily devotional, email newsletter, a lot higher than I was expecting, but still serves a purpose. Kids and family resources, that is great to see that almost at 50%. I'm seeing a lot of more churches adapt and create like either publish content or create content for families that are home. Podcasts and blog. That's actually a little bit surprising for me on the blog side. I would have thought it would be a little bit higher, but maybe not. And then podcast is actually kind of low too. I think I've seen that kind of become more and more of a thing recently, but I suspect that maybe to be changed a little bit here as well. So awesome, great. Well, I think that gives us just kind of a context of how you all are thinking about content and engagement. Now, obviously, you have places like Facebook and Instagram that you send that content out to, but I wanted to more know not necessarily what platform you were going to, but what content you were producing. So obviously, putting your sermon on Facebook and YouTube serves its purpose. So I did see some of that Facebook and different things kind of pop in here. So here's one other statement here, and then we're going to dive into some of the next steps. Is we know this, and you've heard this in different circles, that the message does not change, right? The gospel message does not change, but the method has to, right? You think about Jesus when he walked with the disciples and he gave the message and he said, go out and make disciples of all nations, right? Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You know, Paul gets the message and he goes to launches churches in Ephesus and he uses all these different things. He's out there. That message is still the same. You look at throughout church history, it's the same gospel good news. But the method has changed pretty dramatically. I mean, if like you think about like the disciples, what they did when the early church to what we do now, not that what we do now is bad or wrong, but it's just that it's different. The method has changed. And I think we kind of find ourselves now in a different crossroads now, where we know the gospel is not going to change. And we know that it's the good news, but we're asking ourselves this question, like, how does the method adapt? Like, how do we reach the other 75% of people that are not engaged with us now? How do we grow in this post-COVID, in COVID, wherever you're at kind of concept? Like, what does that look like? And how do we shift that method to make sure that we can approach that in a way that helps people grow in their next step in their discipleship journey? Which happens to be exactly what I was going to do. So here's, on the beginning, I talked about this. I talked about how Subsplash is focused on the discipleship journey. Now, here's the other thing. You as a church, you're focused on the discipleship journey. You are focused on how do I keep people engaged? Now, I know I keep using that word engagement, but engagement is people that are connecting with your church body, or another way to look at it, connecting with God through what you guys are doing. That is what we're trying to help you do through our platform and help you think about how you can connect people. Now, we're about to go into a brief demo on the platform in of itself, but here's something that I want you to think about. Most of you right now have a couple different solutions doing different things, right? You have a weekend solution. How do I plan a worship team and how do I check in my kids? That is a management platform, right? This is how I execute the production of a gathering, right? And then you have like social platforms that are out there and they're all doing great things. Or maybe you have a Bible reading plan and you have them going to this website or that place. What Subsplash is focusing in on is how do we help you have the platform that bridges that gap where no matter where people are in their journey with you or with God, that you can help and connect them in a way that allows them to take that next step with you. So one of those things is centralizing a place for your content, right? Instead of having this account and that account and this account and basically having to upload to 7 places to do one sermon, we've been able to help you and we've been able to scale with you to have a place to manage and distribute that content, either it be a podcast or the sermon, or maybe your VBS going live this summer with, limited capacity, right? Distributing that content, taking it out beyond the 4 walls of your church. And then there's the giving component. We know this, that people that are engaged with you, I ask this question all the time with pastors, what does it look like to be an engaged person at your church? You're serving, you're in a small group, you're giving of your time, of your resources, right? And so there's a couple different formulas that we have here, right? And so giving is one of those, right? So somebody that's ready to give their time or give of their money. And so we want to be able to create a seamless platform for you on that front, where when people come on a Friday after they get paid and they want to give, like they're most likely not giving on Sunday. And then if they are, they can, but they might be sitting down on their dinner table giving. We want to have a seamless way for them to be able to do that from one place. Now, dedicated platforms for digital touch points. So back to the places that people are connecting with you. Like, we know people are on Facebook and Instagram, right? So you connect with them, but how can you connect with them beyond a post? How can you take that conversation about you need prayer? How can I meet your needs? How does that conversation then begin to evolve from a actual communal standpoint? And so those touch points, that's where Subsplash, at least our platform, has been able to do from the app side, from the web, and even from some of the actual applications like Apple TV and Roku. So that's what I mean by platforms for touch points here. What are the actual places people are engaging with you? And then lastly, we talk about creating a culture. We talk about creating a culture that engages with the word 4+ times a week, right? How do you help create that culture? Now, you can say, hey, we want you to read your word. We think it's important. We know this is a big deal. But if you don't have the right tools to help support that culture, right, then you're just battling. You're battling against an algorithm. You're battling against different things. But if you can have a central place where you can do that and guide your people, where when Manny wakes up in the morning and he grabs his cup of coffee and he's going to do a devotional, he comes to your platform, right? He comes to your app to do a Bible reading plan, to connect with God, connect with you, engaged with you, engaged with the word, giving of his time, watching your sermon, into your podcast. It's a cycle. That's how you are helping connect people to you and to Jesus. That's what we're doing here. So real quick thing, I want to do a brief demo. Now, some of you that are clients, this is your day-to-day. You're in here every single week. You see how things are going. You see how it's all functioning. Some of you might be clients, might be people on the outside looking in, and you've never really seen this. But this is the hub. This is when I say, how are you connecting with people Monday through Friday? This is how you get that data. Are people downloading your app? When are they downloading your app, right? How often are they launching it? What sermons are trending right now? Maybe we should do a sermon on love again, because this one had crazy views, right? When are people launching, right? This is a good one. Are they launching it on Wednesday, on Thursday, only on Sunday? How do we move them over to weekly 4+ touch points, right? So this is kind of from a data standpoint, how are you connecting people beyond Sunday? We have to think beyond Sunday. That is the change that you're going to continue to hear as we kind of go through this. So this is our dashboard, and this is kind of how we help churches do this and manage it from a back end, right? So here we got our media platform. This is what I call Subsplash's secret sauce. Honestly, there just really isn't an easy way to do this in the industry. Most of you, if you're not on Subsplash, have to attack this in multiple different ways. But with our media platform here, you're able to have a centralized place. Maybe you're a series-based church and you have your Leviticus series. You can go ahead and drop your sermon within there and kind of have a place so you can organize that. How are you connecting people from an on-demand perspective, right? You all are producing a Sunday sermon every single week. How are you dialing in the long tail of that? Like, how are you publishing that to where it needs to go, your app and your web, your environment, where people are connected with you during the week? And then you got other content out here, like the kids content and other stuff that you can go ahead and take and send that out to your people. You want to engage them with content. This is the vehicle that you're able to do that with. Now, last year, we were able to launch also Subsplash Live. Now, this is an incredible tool where now not only are we talking about the long tail of a service, but now even the actual weekend gathering. So you got the whole thing here, from tuning in at 9 a.m. on Sunday to tuning in on a Tuesday night because you missed a sermon, in one place. And you're also able to see the data on how this performed as a live event and how this performed as an on-demand event. And you can tell your pastor, we have 4,000 views on this entire sermon, but the majority of them are coming in on demand. So gives you context on how are people engaging with your content and how is that working. And so basic things like syndication of Facebook and YouTube, obviously we can do, but we're really just trying to bring that holistic gospel content, sermon publishing stuff out to your people is what we're trying to help here. We talked about podcasts too, and we'll dive into this a little bit more. Great opportunity to up that touch point, right? 2 to 3 times a week. What does that look like for somebody to maybe start a marriage podcast, right? Maybe start a family podcast. Here's something that I know is true. Every church right now, when their pastor walks on Sunday, has to preach a sermon that engages with somebody that's been walking with the Lord for 15 years and one that's been walking with the Lord maybe for 15 minutes. And that's really hard to do in 35, 40 minutes, right? To be able to do that. There's a tension there. I do think that a podcast has the potential, and I'm really just thinking about additional content, to maybe take a deeper dive into theology, maybe take a deeper dive into maybe something like leadership or influencing culture. Maybe your youth pastor or your young adults pastor has some great ideas. Why don't you put this all in one platform here where you can then publish this out to Apple Podcasts, publish this out on your app, kind of build those touch points where people are not just connecting with you on Sunday, but they're connecting with you in different places in their daily walk with God. And I think the podcast allows us to be able to do that. So a couple things here too. We got events. So when either right now you might have some digital events, or maybe people, once they're ready to take that next step to come to youth night or to your women's conference, we want to be able to be that place, right? When they're ready to take that next step in their discipleship journey, that they can now go ahead and do that. We talked briefly about giving. People are going to give when they want to give, being ready for where they are when they are ready to do that. You want to make sure you have the right tools and the right user experience for them to be able to do that and worship God seamlessly. Apps. This piece right here is the touch points, right? So what platforms are people connecting with you? And so we have the ability for you to have that mobile app reach, be able to design this the way that you want, have a welcome screen that kind of meets people with, here are the things I want you to do on this app. Obviously your sermons, giving, and then the Bible piece, man, this is huge. If you can just get your people reading the Bible daily, that's a huge win. And giving them the pieces to do that, I think is a big add for those touch points that we're talking about. And then we also have TV, Apple TV and Roku, for people to, maybe they're at home, or I actually had a church the other day that they are launching this initiative for Oikos Church and the home church concept. And so Roku's, I think, are like $20, and in their budget, they can afford buying these home kits for people, and the Roku's gonna be a part of that with their Roku app loaded there, content for small groups and everything that they'll need. Like, it's just a really cool idea. So being able to have your content on TVs in people's living room, I think is a huge add there as well. Two last things I want to hit on the platform. We're thinking about, how do we engage people beyond Sunday, right? How do we engage people throughout the week? On our platform, not only do we have the ability for you to have your own app, but now you can connect your website to that. And I don't know why that happened, but I'm gonna go back. But connect your website to that. So you can build your own website on Snap Pages itself, which is integrated into this Subsplash platform that we're talking about. So you're having one place to manage, not going to all these different places, and really be able to drag and drop the web you're trying to build, the web experience that you're trying to build. And then some of you might have a website that you're like, Manny, we're actually sitting here for like 3 years on this platform. We can't leave, like we have too much money invested in this right now. But don't let that limit your engagement reach. Don't let that limit. You can still put components of the Subsplash platform to your WordPress site, to Squarespace, wherever you're going, through these different tools. How do we extend Subsplash and your sermon, your content to your website? So you have things like your media library, right? Put that on there, drop it on your media page, and then people are able to connect with you. Now, here's one little quick thing I want to show you. If you go put your sermon on YouTube, the next sermon that comes up is probably not your sermon, or maybe it's a cat video. But what we've done is we've all been able to have this algorithm within our player that allows to have more suggested content based on what is there. So if somebody's on your website and they watch, this is obviously our demo account, but let's say this is series one, sermon one from your love series, they can go and see more from this series and be able to, what's that next step? Maybe it's another sermon. Maybe it's like, man, I want to hear more about what this pastor's talking about. And you're able to kind of meet them there. I think that's huge, and a big thing that when you're on a platform that's discipleship focused, allows you to kind of tap into a little bit more. So live stream, put your embed, your events, a couple of different things that you can connect the power of our platform over to what you guys are doing. So last thing here, messaging. This is a game changer. Listen, most platforms out there, it's a one-way communication. Here's our newsletter, one-way communication. But now you have the visual to see how people are engaging with you. Look at this. This channel has 72 members in there. You can go in there, you can see who's in it, how they're engaging. This is a key part of making that gap, that conversation that's happening in your chat on Sunday. How do you get that conversation over to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, in a group, 3, boom, giving? That is the next step, right? Getting people from attending to engaging, right? And engagement means different things, but ultimately what I'm saying is that they're taking that next step in your church. They're gonna start giving, they're gonna start attending, whatever it is. That is messaging kind of really changes the game when we talk about that. So this gets me fired up. I'm sure there's so many questions on this demo here, but this is really a big part of what we're talking about. So with sake of time, I want to leave you with 4 next steps, and we're going to get into your Q&A. Here we go. First one, establish a touch point beyond Sunday. You don't got to get super fancy, just start. Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a quick video from your pastor that's 5 minutes that you start sending via a push notification. Hey, check this out. We love you. We're here for you. Get the content out there. And then you're probably doing it on Facebook. You're probably doing it on YouTube. That's one way to do it. But also, what does it look like to get people connected to your environment that you can control? Number 2, start a reading plan. This is the easiest thing you can do. You can import a custom plan, or you can use one of our templated ones. And now you say, church, we need to be a church that reads the word. Every day, we're going to be following this plan together. Get the whole church following the same plan together. Think about that. If your whole community is thinking about the same scripture that day, what it can do. Maybe do a theology class. There's a client of mine that launched a new theology that they're going to different books in the New Testament, and they have different pastors and different speakers on that topic, right? People are looking for this content. So put that in the app and people are able to kind of connect with you on that. But here's the key. 2 to 3 touch points per week can really change the way that people are mentally connected with God and mentally connected with you. And so that's a big deal here that you want to make sure that you're able to connect with. Now, this is one of my clients here in DC, National Community Church. Love these people. Check this amazing quote by Amanda. Subsplash has helped us to focus on discipleship by giving us an easy and intuitive way to meet people right where they are. We've been able to put daily devotional content, reading plans, resources for parents, curriculum for groups, and so much more right in people's hands. All of this has helped us stay connected in what could have felt like a very disconnected season. I want to call a couple things out here. One, you got a lot of content. You got a lot of things. Streamline what you guys are doing. Build that engagement on a place that you can control. And this is the kind of stuff that NCC is able to do because of what they've been able to do through their mobile app. So 2, here's one thing I want you to think about for Easter is centralize your communication. So one thing super easy to just activate is messaging, right? So we talked about people are engaging with your chat on Sunday. How do you get that conversation over to Monday? Go ahead and activate messaging in your app. We also have a web version too. So maybe if people don't want to connect with you on the app for whatever reason, they don't want to download it. They maybe this Easter think about doing like a Easter lobby, or maybe do like an Easter pre-party and put that on your website and say, hey, come join our chat, have a couple of different pastors on there, and continue that conversation into the week. Don't let it just end when the services is over. So I think messaging kind of allows that to be able to be that point of contact. And then also we got private groups, direct messaging to take that conversation where it needs to meet the needs of those people when they need it. So Bert Alcorn over in California, he said this. He said, I see Subsplash messaging being crucial for any church, any size, any culture. Good communication transcends culture. Really exciting potential for any church, which I completely agree with. How are we able to really, people want to communicate with each other, right? They're more likely to text, I'm praying for you, than they are to call. That's just the reality, right? I was texting my dad this morning and he's like, hey, this was going on. I need you to pray, whatever. Like, I'm more likely to call. I mean, call's always good too, but people are more likely to message. And so I think that's a big deal on how you're trying to solve that as a church. And solving it in a place that other things are happening within the church, right? Like that's where they're watching their gospel content. That's where they're giving, kind of building that hub, if you will. Number 3, go ahead right now. This is the easiest thing you can do is build a dedicated hub on your app, right? So an Easter hub where you're going to drive people to. So if you hear anything on this webinar, there's a lot of things that I've said. Do not lose the opportunity that you have of all the digital foot traffic you're about to get coming through your app and website. Drop an Easter hub where maybe it's like a connect card for Easter, or maybe here's some content for your kids or something that's specific around Easter, and make a public announcement about that on Sunday. Say, hey, we're glad you're joining in on Easter. We actually on our app, we have an Easter hub. This is a great place for you to go ahead and follow along with our new reading plan that we're launching next week. Drive that engagement, because here's the thing. You're not going to get another opportunity with this much engagement coming to you digitally. If you can fill up that bucket of engagement, drive people to download the app, now when they walk away from your stream on Sunday, or when they walk away from your gathering on Sunday, you're at least in their pocket. You at least have a way to connect with them when they walk out through a notification or messaging or whatever, right? So from an engagement standpoint, fill up that bucket, do it now, because you won't have that opportunity the weekend after. So I want to make sure that you guys can go ahead and get that up and running. And then lastly here, and then we're going to go into some Q&A. Here's what's really cool. Subsplash Giving is already part of all of your packages. So if you're on Subsplash right now and you're using 3 or 4 different giving solutions, Subsplash Giving is already there. All you got to do is go ahead and activate it on your dashboard. And Subsplash Giving is actually an in-app giving. So you'll be able to actually have a place where people can give right there in your app, as opposed to going to this weird, wonky third-party website. So make sure that you go ahead and activate that before Easter. Maybe some people are visiting and they want to just, hey, we love the sermon and we want to support you, and they can give that way. So make sure that you get this up and running before Easter. And then maybe you've thought about giving in the past and you're like, man, we talked about it before. I talked to somebody else. I'll tell you this, man, our giving team is on fire right now. Like, they really are, with the different things that are coming out. Donor covers fees, guest giving is coming out here. Like, it's already in production. Like, it's coming out really soon, where people can give without creating an account. Maybe that's a barrier for certain people. But here's another thing that I want to just call out here too with giving. You should not be paying for a giving solution. Subsplash does not cost you anything monthly. I know I'm stepping on some toes right now, but here's the thing. Paying for a giving solution is like paying your usher to pass the bucket around. Doesn't make any sense to me. There are solutions out there that don't cost you a monthly platform fee. And Subsplash is one of them. And then obviously there's the rates part of that and I think Subsplash approaches that in a way that we want to make it a good win for you from a standpoint on the rates. But you should not be paying, in my opinion, a monthly fee for giving if there are solutions out there that they don't require you to pay for a monthly giving. And so here's what I love about what Barrett said. Hey, we love the app giving integration and Grow Curve. So Grow Curve is our rates decrease as your volume increases. Again, no monthly fee, but the rates actually adapt to the growth that you get on the platform. And we have saved our church money by using Subsplash compared to our previous providers, and they have helped us accomplish the same goals. Technology has changed a lot. Maybe you're nervous about switching giving. You don't got to switch everything in one day, but think about what it would look like to reduce operating costs, streamline your workflow, and also have a consistent engagement platform that people are able to kind of connect with you through giving. At the end of the day, y'all, it's about this one thing. How are you helping people on their next step in their discipleship journey? And so I hope on this, you've learned a couple things. Maybe you have some questions, some things to debrief with your team. Just a couple next steps here. One, if you are a client, you need to call your CSM right after this. They're going to help you with strategy. They're going to help you with the things that you and I just talked about today. I tried to get as high level as I can, but there's a lot of details that you can go over with your CSM. If next step, get a podcast up and running. Talk to your pastor. Say, hey, what does it look like for us to do something that maybe is a little bit more outside of the sermon? What would that look like? How can we reach people? Enable messaging. Easter's coming. Get those visitors in your space. They need the gospel. They need you. Connect with them on messaging. Take that conversation to Monday. Take that conversation to Tuesday. And then we already talked about giving and activating that. Super easy to do right there on your dashboard. If you're not a client and you're like, Manny, I'm on the outside looking in. I'm trying to figure out what you guys are talking about. We have a team of ministry consultants that are able to kind of help you find out, hey, this is the problem you're trying to solve. This is how we can help you get to that place. So make sure you reach out to that. Links would be in the webinar. Awesome. So we got a couple seconds for some Q&A, but I do want to dive into some of these. And if you got to run, you got to go. I get it. Man, I hope you know my heart. I love you guys. You guys are just doing such amazing work out there in the church. So a couple things. One of the questions here is Chris asked, define engagement. Such a good question and a buzzword in the industry for sure. Here's the way that I would approach this. I'll put it like this. Are people thinking about Jesus throughout the week? Are you giving them the resources to take that next step in their walk? And are they like, are they reading their word? Are they giving? Are they using the resources that you're giving them? That's what I mean by engagement. Not necessarily engaging them to get something out of them, but engaging them in a way to help them on that next step in their walk with Christ. And so that's what I think engagement is, right? Maybe it's that notification that you send out about the new podcast, and then now a dad's like, hey, maybe I should start watching this. Or something in that regard, I think is just, sometimes we try to get so technical. And it's like, does this integrate with that? And does this, and I get that there's a place for that, but sometimes it's like analysis paralysis. You're thinking so hard that you're missing the opportunity right in front of you. Get out there, launch a Bible reading plan, be a part of somebody's morning experience. And so that's what I mean by engagement. And maybe hopefully that answers your question, but that's the best way that I can help answer that right now. Let's see here. I'm assuming that's presentation slides into Subsplash. There's a couple different ways to have, it just depends on what you're uploading. That question we'll probably have to take offline because I don't know exactly what you're asking there. But obviously you can upload your sermon, whatever is on the post-production side of that would be in Subsplash Media. If you're trying to get some sort of like slides and content out, there are different ways for you to be able to do that on the Subsplash platform. So I'm going to just say that might be one that you can follow up with your CSM or your MC. How can I avoid making an engagement a competition between churches? Come on, Glenn. That is a good question. So I think at the end of the day, we're really not competing against the church down the road. I think what you really need to think about is I'm competing against the other tech giants that are taking my people's screen time. That's my opinion. So I would say you should be focusing in on screen time rather than being better than the person down the road or competing with the person down the road. And so I think things like what we've talked about today, like little things of engagement, they get people's mind towards the gospel and towards your church, I think is a big deal there. But this is a big one. I agree with you. I think there sometimes seems to be a competition. Now, I will say this, competition gets a lot more crazy when you're on YouTube, when you're on Facebook, when you're on Instagram. So I do think that there's a value, right? Just like in the business world, there's a lot of marketing competition on those platforms too. So if you can then lead your engagement plan towards a place that you can control, it gives you an advantage, if you want to look at it that way, that you do not have when somebody launches Facebook and launches Instagram. So I will say owning your platform and being able to get that going, I think is a big deal. So, but that's a really good question. So I think we have time for maybe two more. And I know if you guys got to run, you have to, but I want to see if there's a couple more here that I can go after. Are there plans in getting the Bible reading plans from the app onto the website platform? That would be huge for us. I have to check with that. I don't know if there's actually a plan like on the product roadmap to get that over to the web. That is a good thought. I think. Yeah, I'm trying to think of workarounds. This is my CSM mind working. When you work with your CSM, they always think about what are different ways that we can get that going for you. There's probably a couple of different ways we can do it. Not as streamlined and probably the way that you want or thinking right now, but I recommend connecting with your CSM on that. There's a couple of different ways that we can use certain things like fill-in notes and other things to kind of embed that to the site. So Tammy, I'd recommend you connecting with your CSM. If I'm your CSM, we can talk about that too. But that's a really good question. All right. So do live streams on Subsplash allow for comments or chat like Church Online does? Stay tuned. We're really working on what it looks like to take the conversation from Sunday to Monday. And I will say that stay tuned. We don't do that right now. I would say in the meantime, I recommend connecting people that are, again, thinking about bridging the gap between services over to their next step of the call to action. So I think messaging plays a role in that. I think messaging in the app in web and the fact that it's on web kind of changes the game for that. You can even put on your like Church Online platform link, hey, continue the conversation here, boom, click that, and maybe have 3 prompts that you ask people on. I'm just kind of thinking through. But right now, that will be coming. But I will say that there are ways for you to connect your stream over to that conversation. So, okay, let me see. I love that we still have a lot of people on, so I can keep going with some of these questions. And my panelists are telling me like, keep it going, keep it going. Let's see. Ooh, this is a good one. This is a good one. Caleb Hoffman. I love Subsplash Live, the new ability to edit before posting. Will we have the option to edit after posting? Currently, we have to upload our live and then we post for everything. So, yeah, so that's a good question, Caleb. So right now, with Subsplash Live, for those that might not know, obviously your Sunday gathering is intro, worship or whatever, and then there's different components, and then amen. So now with Subsplash Live, you can actually just trim that after the sermon's over. If you just want to do bumper video to pastors, amen, you can do that, and then it uploads it on demand. I think what Caleb's asking here is, after that, can you trim it again? Caleb, I think that is something that is already something that we can do. So I would circle back around. I think you're asking is, can we trim on-demand content? That if it's not something, I think that's something that we could bring up to our team and see if that's something that we can implement. But I'd connect also with your CSM on that one. But that's actually really, really, really correct and on demand. Okay, great, Caleb, I got that question right. But really good question. I actually never thought about that, so that's actually really good. All right, so let's see. Ooh, this is a good one too, by Luke. Our church has multiple podcasts. How can we link or upload that to our Subsplash app? Luke, I feel like I don't know why I'm thinking about Star Wars right now. But so here's what I'd recommend. One, if you were to migrate your podcast over to the Subsplash platform, you can have multiple podcasts on Subsplash, and we can send that over to Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever. And then that's integrated into your app web ecosystem. So now you have one place to be able to do that. I've done this with a handful of churches. I would also connect with your CSM on this one, because we want to make sure there is a way for you to migrate your podcast off of X Provider to Subsplash without affecting your subscribers. So it's not going to affect people outside. It's just a back end RSS feed change. We have some tools to help you do that. I just did that with, maybe you guys know this church, Grace City, down in Florida in Lakeland. Just did that with them. And now they have their podcast in one place. And what I like about this is you're driving people to your app also for this content, not Apple Podcasts where they can listen to other stuff too. So I think, Luke, that's a good question. But to answer your question directly, you got to migrate that content over to Subsplash. That way it's all integrated and working together. All right. Let's see. Let's see if there's a couple. I want to see the ones that are. Oh, this is a good one. I'm sorry if I cannot pronounce your name, so I'm very, very sorry. I'm going to try. Benga asked this, can you integrate Zoom sessions into the app? Absolutely. So we actually can, through Subsplash Live, integrate a Zoom session through our player. Zoom has an encoder that we work with. And so there is a way to integrate, like this conversation could be technically live in your Subsplash app right now. So yes, there is a way to be able to do that. Let's see here. So Brandy Round asked the question, and I'll do a couple more here. Andy asked, how can you tell the numbers on the live event versus on demand? So once the service is over and you go and you publish that media item, so let's say Sunday sermon, whatever, you go into the media item and you can click into it, and it shows you plays for live and shows you plays for on demand. And then it actually breaks down on which devices people are watching, and then it actually breaks down what location people are watching with live. So you can see those two things. So you have one view of like weekend 2 in the Love series performed this way, and it kind of gives you a holistic kind of view of that. Sweet. All right, let's see here. I'm going to do 2 more. Make sure to upvote them if you want to make sure you want these to be answered. Okay, Barnabas. How can the messaging on the app be more than just one more means of communication, text, WhatsApp, Facebook. We have so many to keep up with now. Yeah. Yeah. I think what happened, Barnabas, is on the onset of what happened with COVID is like everybody went and tried to solve things with band-aid solutions, and every ministry tried to do their own thing, and everything kind of just happened. So I think what I would challenge you to think of is, what would it look like for us to consolidate um, over to Subsplash messaging? I think that there are certain things that you don't want to disrupt. Absolutely, I get that. But I think moving forward, if you're able to, hey, this is the culture of our church, right? Like, this is the culture of how we communicate as a staff, or how we communicate into our groups. You can make that switch over to Subsplash, and it gives you the data too. Like right now, you got WhatsApp, Facebook, and you have no idea how many people are in these groups or nothing. So like from a data analytics standpoint, you can at least get a high level view. You don't get to see every conversation unless you're in that channel. But now you can see, man, we got 7 groups going good right now. And we're seeing, man, like the youth, they're killing it right now with how many people are in their channels. And so I think kind of gives you that perspective. But there's a little bit of work there, but I would say it's worth it. And then you, again, back to engagement, back to meeting people Monday through Friday. If they're connecting with your app through messaging beyond Sunday, then maybe they start watching the sermon, and now you meet them at the podcast level, and now they're giving. That is the future of discipleship, right? People are not always going to show up on Sunday, but meeting them where they're at during the week is a big deal. So that's really good. All right, here we go. I hope this is helpful. I see some people saying that it's going well. I feel like it is. I'd love to be able to have a cup of coffee with you if we can, if you're in Virginia. Let's see here. I'm gonna do one more. Okay, this is a good one. This is a long one, but I think it's a good one. We'll end on this one. Sally Kim, our community has been focused on emphasizing engagement. See you, Deborah. Within our individual life groups for years before started on Subsplash, which has cultivated a strong messaging culture on a different platform. The messaging feature seems like an opportunity, but I can't really grasp potential. Look for it. Is it really worth? Sorry, it keeps moving. Basically, is how do we move people over, and if it's really worth it? And I think Sally, that's a good question, and I think that's a question that you need to have. And again, it comes back to like, it's almost like when you're changing a platform, there's a lot of things that are a part of that, and messaging grows very organically. So here's what I would recommend. At the end of the day, you can always test it out, right? So like, I think maybe start a beta group, maybe 4 or 5 groups, and see, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Because what you're thinking, Sally, you're thinking engagement. If I can get more people off of this platform and on our mobile app, I have at least a connection to them more often than I do now when they're on Facebook Messenger, for example. So if you can just in your mind agree with that value and then begin to think about the game plan to get people there. One step is do beta groups with a couple different people, get their feedback. And it's only going to work if your leadership is bought in, right? It's only going to work if your group's director and all the way down the road, people are bought in. And then that really grows organically, right? People inviting people to a group, starting their own channel, like those things kind of open up and kind of open up organically. So, hey, I am so glad that we were able to have this time together. My heart is hopefully you're able to see that Subsplash is wanting to help you think beyond Sunday. And I think it's not something that we're going to solve on one webinar, but it's something that you know what we're thinking, we know what you're thinking, and we love this feedback here. But let's continue to lean in this season and really make sure that we're able to connect with people to the Word, to God, and into your community. So love getting to hang with you all. I really, really appreciate the time that we've had, and have a good rest of your day.